At 21, Lena Varrick owned 3 things: a cracked leather satchel, a black dress she had already worn to 2 funerals, and $1 silver she was too frightened to spend. So when the county auctioneer pointed at the abandoned stone jail on the north edge of Bitterwash and laughed, Lena did the one thing no one in town expected. She raised that dollar. The men on the courthouse steps went quiet for half a breath. Then they laughed harder, because to them, that jail was a dead place, a sweating little block of limestone with rusted bars, a roof that groaned in the wind, and a reputation so rotten even drunks crossed the road rather than sleep near it. But Lena did not see a ruin. She saw walls that could not throw her out, and buried inside those walls was the one thing the town's most powerful man had failed to kill: a witness. Bitterwash, Texas, was the kind of town that looked unfinished even after 10 years of trying. 1 street, 2 wells, a general store with warped steps, a blacksmith shed that rang from dawn until supper, and a courthouse built too proud for the dust around it. The year was 1887. Rain came rarely. Mercy came rarer. Lena arrived in a freight wagon with a storm-gray sky pressing low over the flats. She had ridden 40 miles beside flour barrels and fence wire, clutching her satchel as if someone might steal the last proof that she had ever belonged anywhere. 3 weeks earlier, her older sister Ruth had died of fever outside Tascosa. Ruth's husband, Amos Klein, buried her before sundown, then told Lena there was no room left in his house for grief that did not earn its keep. He did not shout. That made it worse. He only stood in the doorway and said, "You're grown enough to make your own road now." So Lena made one. It ended at Bitterwash because the freight wagon stopped there, and because her money would not take her farther. For 2 days she slept in the back room of Mrs. Adler's boarding house, listening to strangers cough through thin walls. During the day she walked the town until her boots raised little ghosts of dust around her hem. She looked for work, but every answer was a door closing softly. The store needed a man strong enough to unload sacks. The boarding house needed no help. The courthouse clerk said the county had nothing for a girl with mourning eyes and no references. On the 3rd morning, Lena found the auction notice nailed outside the general store. Surplus county property, barren parcels, broken fencing, 2 confiscated mules. And at the bottom, in a narrow line of ink, Old North Jail and Lot, stone structure, sold as is. Opening bid, $1. She read it once, then again. A jail was a place made for people no one wanted near them. That should have warned her away. Instead, the words stone structure stayed in her mind. Stone did not soften its voice and ask you to leave. Stone did not decide your sorrow took up too much room. Stone remained. The auction took place the next Saturday under a white sun that made the courthouse windows glare like polished bone. Marshal Gideon Cale handled the sale himself, though everyone knew he enjoyed the theater more than the duty. Cale was broad through the chest, red at the neck, and always clean in a town where honest work left a mark. His badge shone brighter than anything else about him. He sold the mule team first, then the fencing, then a patch of worthless creek bottom so alkaline even weeds seemed insulted by it. At last, he lifted the final paper and grinned. "And now, the pride of Bitterwash," he called, "the Old North Jail. Fine accommodations for snakes, ghosts, and fools. Who opens at $1? A few men chuckled. Someone near the water trough said, "Burn it and save the county the trouble." Cale waited, smiling at the silence he expected. Then Lena lifted her hand. Her silver dollar was pinched between two fingers. "I bid 1. The words were quiet, but they carried. Every face turned. Cale's smile narrowed. He knew Lena only as the new girl in black, another stray blown in by hunger and misfortune. He looked from her hand to her dress to the satchel at her feet, and the crowd read his contempt before he spoke. $1 from Miss Varrick, he said. Any man here willing to rescue her from her own judgment? No one answered. Lena kept her hand raised. The marshal let the pause stretch long enough to become cruelty. Going once, he said. A ranch hand coughed to hide a laugh. Going twice? Lena felt heat rise in her face, but she did not lower her hand. Sold, Cale said, striking the lectern with the flat of his palm. To the lady buying herself a cage. The laughter followed her all the way up the steps. She placed the dollar down. It made a small, clean sound against the wood. That sound did something to her. For the first time in weeks, something was final because she had chosen it. The deed was thin paper. The key was iron, larger than her palm, and cold even in the sun. Cale dropped it into her hand with a look that said he expected her to return it before nightfall. You'll find the place poor company, he said. Lena closed her fingers around the key. I've had poorer. The crowd did not laugh that time. The jail sat beyond the last hitching rail, where town dust gave way to mesquite scrub and pale grass. It was smaller than she expected, squat, square, and stubborn, with 2 slit windows barred in rust and a warped oak door hanging crooked on its hinges. The air around it smelled of hot stone, old rain, rat droppings, and something colder underneath. Lena stood before it with her satchel in one hand and the key in the other. For a moment she nearly turned back. Then a dog limped from the shade of the north wall. He was yellow under the dust, rib thin, with one front paw held tenderly above the ground. He stopped when he saw Lena, but he did not run. He only watched her with the tired patience of a creature who had stopped expecting kindness. Lena broke the last biscuit in her pocket and tossed half of it into the weeds. The dog sniffed it, swallowed it, and looked at her again. I don't have much, she said. His tail moved once. Then we're matched. She named him Button because one of his eyes was dark as a coat button, and because naming him anything grand seemed untrue. That first night, Lena did not sleep inside. The jail's interior was too foul, too black, too full of sounds she could not name. She built a small fire outside the door, wrapped herself in her shawl, and leaned against the stone. Button slept close enough to steal warmth, but not close enough to admit he trusted her. The wind moved through the bars with a low, hollow tone. It did not sound like a ghost. It sounded like breath. At dawn, Lena began the work. She hauled water from the eastern well, 2 buckets at a time, while children trailed behind her and dared each other to touch the jail wall. She bought lye soap on credit from Mr. Pruitt at the store, along with a broom, a stiff brush, and 3 candles. He packed the items without asking what she meant to do, but his eyes kept slipping to her blistered hands. The front room had once been a marshal's office. A desk lay on its side with one leg broken. Old wanted notices had melted into the floor with damp. The 2 cells behind it were worse. The south cell smelled like mold. The north cell smelled like fear. Lena started there. She scrubbed because she had nothing else to do with pain. She scrubbed until black water ran down the limestone. She scrubbed until her knuckles split. She scrubbed until the wall changed color under her brush, from soot brown to gray-white. By noon, her back shook. By afternoon, her anger had become rhythm. Brush, rinse, breathe. Brush, rinse, breathe. Near sunset, a slant of gold entered through the barred slit and touched the wall beside the iron-caught frame. That was when Lena saw the first mark. Not a crack, not a stain, a line. Then 4 more beside it, crossed through at an angle. Tally marks. She leaned closer. Below the tallies, half hidden beneath old grime, someone had carved a date. March 3rd, 1882. Under that, a name, E. Pike. The letters were small and careful, not scratched by a bored prisoner, but cut by someone trying to make stone remember. Lena forgot her aching hands. She moved the candle closer and found more marks beneath the cot frame. A cattle brand shaped like a broken ladder, a set of numbers, 2 initials, another date. The cell wall was not scarred at random. It had been used, like paper. That night, Lena sat on the floor with charcoal from her fire and copied every mark she could see onto wrapping paper from the store. Button lay in the doorway, ears lifting whenever the wind changed. By candlelight, the carvings looked alive. Broken ladder, circle M, 6 tally groups, 17-4-9, Widow Bell, North Deed. She did not understand most of it, but she understood enough to know one thing. Someone had spent a long time in that cell, trying not to vanish. The next morning, Lena went back to scrubbing. The more walls she cleaned, the more the jail spoke. The south cell held cattle brands arranged beside dates. The corridor held initials and little crosses. Behind the office desk, just above the baseboard, someone had carved a crude map of the Creek Valley north of town. And everywhere, numbers. Some were plain, days counted in lonely groups, weeks stacked like fence posts. Others were strange, 5-19-3, 11-1-12, a name beside a number, a brand beside a date, a short phrase that made no sense until it made too much. Cale took Spring Road. Tell Judge W. No rustlers. Ledger hidden. Lena copied it all. She began to ask questions carefully. At the store, she said she wanted old newspapers for patching cracks. Pruitt gave her a bundle from the loft, tied with twine and smelling of mice. In those pages, she found the official story. Elias Pike, drifter and suspected cattle thief, arrested in 1882 for the murder of Henry Bell, a farmer whose land touched the only spring-fed branch north of Bitterwash. Marshal Gideon Cale had captured Pike personally. The trial never happened. Pike died in the jail that summer after what the paper called lung fever and stubborn silence. There were other articles, too. A herd missing from the Circle M. A widow's claim surrendered for unpaid taxes. A dispute over survey lines dismissed for lack of witnesses. Each article named Cale as the man restoring order. Each carving suggested he had been making it. On the 6th day, Marshal Cale came to the well while Lena filled her buckets. He did not greet her. He only watched the water rise in the pail. "You've been busy out there." Lena kept the rope steady. "A building won't clean itself." "Some buildings ain't improved by cleaning." She lifted the bucket and set it down. The weight pulled at her wrists. Cale stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "That jail has a sickness in it. Men went in there and came out worse, if they came out at all. A sensible woman would board the next wagon west." Lena looked at him then. His face held no anger, only calculation. That frightened her more. "I paid for it," she said. "I intend to keep it." Cale smiled without warmth. "Then keep your eyes on the floorboards and off the walls." He walked away before she could answer. For the rest of that day, Lena's hands shook. By night, they stopped. Fear, she realized, was not a command. It was only a bell ringing inside the body. You could hear it and still move. 2 days later, the jail gave up its key. It happened in the north cell, under the place where the cot frame had rusted into the floor. Lena was scraping packed dirt from the seam between 2 stones when the blade of her kitchen knife sank too deep. The stone shifted. Behind it lay a hollow no bigger than a fist. Inside was a tobacco tin wrapped in oilcloth. Lena sat back, heart beating hard enough to blur her sight. The tin was rusted shut. She pried it open with a knife and found 3 things inside: a stub of pencil, a torn page from Greer's Almanac, 1881, and a folded scrap of muslin covered with tiny handwriting. The muslin was brittle with age, but the words could still be read. "If the numbers survive, use the month table. Cale cannot burn stone. E. Pike." Lena did not breathe for several seconds. Then she understood. The numbers were not random. They were a code. She worked until dawn, matching number pairs against the almanac page, turning month names and calendar lines into letters. At first, the messages came slowly, then faster, then all at once, as if the dead man had been waiting 5 years for someone stubborn enough to listen. Cale sold Circle M Herd under Bell brand. Cale forged Widow Bell release. Henry Bell saw ledger. Cale shot him at Spring Road. Put Bell gun in my hand. I did not kill him. Ledger hidden under Marshal office hearth before arrest. Trust stone. Lena read the final line 3 times. Trust stone. Her throat tightened. Elias Pike had not carved madness into the wall. He had carved a case. A man with no lawyer, no witness, no paper, and no hope had turned his prison into a courthouse that could not be bought. For one wild moment, Lena wanted to run into the street with the muslin in her hand and scream the truth. Then she saw Cale's face in her mind. Calm, clean, calculating. He had buried a farmer, stolen a water claim, framed a prisoner, and worn a badge over it for 5 years. He would not be undone by a grieving woman waving charcoal copies. She needed proof that did not depend on belief. She needed records. The county clerk, Mr. Niles, was old enough to distrust everyone equally. That made him safer than most. Lena went to the courthouse and asked to see the property records for the jail lot, pretending she wanted to know where her boundary ended. Niles frowned, licked his thumb, and brought out the ledgers. For 3 afternoons, Lena sat in the records room under the clerk's watchful eye, copying dates until her neck burned. She found the Bell claim. She found the surrender document. She found the signature that did not match Henry Bell's earlier filings or his widow's shaky hand. She also found the notary seal. It belonged to a man who, according to the newspaper bundle, had died 11 days before the document was signed. When she pointed this out, Niles went very still. "Where did you see that?" he asked. Lena showed him the newspaper. The old clerk did not speak for a long while. Then he closed the ledger gently, as if it had become dangerous. "You should not carry these copies alone," he said. That was the first time anyone in Bitterwash spoke to her as if she might be worth protecting. The second came during a dust storm. It rose without warning near dusk, a brown wall swallowing the road from the south. Lena was outside the jail, tying canvas over the window slit, when she heard a hoarse scream. A wagon had overturned near the mesquite break. 2 children were trapped beneath the canvas cover, and a traveling schoolteacher named Owen Bell was trying to drag them clear with one arm hanging useless at his side. Lena ran. Dust cut her eyes. Button barked himself hoarse. Together, Lena and Owen pulled the children free and half carried them to the jail while the storm turned the world into noise. The old door slammed behind them. Lena dropped the iron bar into place. For the first time in its history, the jail locked people in to keep danger out. Inside, the children cried until Button pressed his dusty head into their laps. Owen Bell sat against the wall, coughing, his sleeve dark where his shoulder had torn open. When he saw the carvings, his face changed. Where did those come from? Lena hesitated. Then she told him. Not all of it. Enough. Owen listened with the stillness of a man hearing his own name inside a buried song. My uncle was Henry Bell, he said at last. Lena felt the room tilt. Owen looked at the map carved in the corridor. His fingers hovered over the creek line, but did not touch it. My aunt always said Henry died over water, not cattle. The spring branch fed 8 claims. Whoever held Bell's quarter could decide who drank and who sold out. He turned to Lena. This wasn't simple theft. Cale was buying the valley one frightened family at a time. The storm battered the jail all night, but the walls held. By morning, Owen Bell had become more than a witness. He was blood. And he knew where his aunt had gone after Cale drove her out. 3 days later, Widow Bell came back to Bitterwash. Her name was Mariah, and she was smaller than Lena expected, with silver hair pinned beneath a black bonnet and hands bent by years of washing other people's linens. But when she stepped down from Owen's wagon and looked at the courthouse, no one mistook her for weak. Word had already spread. Not the truth, not yet, but the shape of something coming. Cale tried to stop it before it reached the judge. He came to the jail at sunset. Lena was alone except for Button. The marshal filled the doorway, one hand resting near his pistol. I gave you a kindness, he said. I told you to leave. Lena stood in the office, the copied papers stacked behind her under a flour sack. You warned me because you were afraid. Cale's face hardened. Afraid of scratches on a wall? Afraid someone would read them. For a second, all the polish left him. The man underneath was older, meaner, and empty around the eyes. That jail is county property, he said. No, Lena replied. It was county property. You sold it to me. He took one step inside. Button growled. Not loud. Enough. Then another voice came from behind Cale. Marshal. Mr. Niles stood outside with Owen Bell, Widow Mariah, and 3 ranchers from the Circle M. More townspeople waited in the road, drawn by the sight of Cale entering a lone woman's house after dark. The marshal's hand moved away from his pistol. Niles lifted a paper. Judge Harrow arrives with the mail stage tomorrow. I have prepared a petition for review of the Bell claim. Cale looked at the faces behind him and understood the ground had changed. He left without another word. The next morning, Bitterwash gathered at the courthouse. Judge Harrow was a lean circuit judge with tobacco stains on his fingers and no patience for public theater. Cale stood beside him, already speaking when Lena entered, calling her unstable, calling Pike a thief, calling the matter old and settled. Lena did not interrupt. She waited until the judge turned to her. "What do you bring this court, Miss Varrick?" She placed the first sheet on his desk. "Stone," she said. A murmur passed through the room. Then she placed down the copied wall marks, the almanac key, the muslin note, the newspaper, the forged deed, the dead notary's date, the tax entries, the cattle sale record that moved a herd under a name tied to Cale's cousin. She did not accuse with anger. She built the road and made them walk it. Elias Pike had been arrested after Henry Bell's death. Before his arrest, Cale's office had a hearth. After the arrest, the hearth had been rebuilt. The Bell deed transferred water access. The notary was dead. The cattle sale followed 10 days later. Pike's carvings matched records no prisoner should have known unless he had seen the crimes from the inside. When she finished, the room was silent. Cale laughed once. It sounded like a chair breaking. "You cannot convict a marshal with jailhouse scratches." Judge Harrow looked at him. "No," he said, "but we can search a hearth." They went together. Half the town crossed the street behind the judge, the clerk, Lena, Owen Bell, Widow Mariah, and a marshal whose badge had begun to look too heavy for his shirt. The hearth in Cale's office was newer than the wall around it. Everyone saw that now. It had always been there, hiding in plain sight. Two men pried up the brick. Beneath the ash bed, wrapped in tarred cloth, was a narrow ledger. Cale lunged for it. Owen Bell caught his arm. The room erupted, boots scraping, voices rising. But Judge Harrow did not move. He opened the ledger himself. Inside were names, brands, dates, payments, water claims. And beside several entries, the same initials carved again and again into the jail wall. G.C. Gideon Cale said nothing. A guilty man may protest. A ruined man recognizes the end. By noon, a deputy from Amarillo had taken his badge. By night, riders had been sent for the federal marshal. Before the week was over, the Bell claim was sealed under court order. Circle M had filed its stolen herd complaint, and Elias Pike's name was entered into the record not as a murderer, but as a material witness who had died in unlawful confinement. The town did not change all at once. Towns rarely do. The same dust blew under the same doors. Men who had laughed at Lena still tipped their hats with embarrassment instead of grace. Some people avoided the jail because it reminded them how long they had mistaken fear for peace. But others came. Widow Mariah came first. She stood in the north cell where Pike had carved her name and pressed her hand to the stone. "He remembered me," she whispered. Lena did not answer. There was nothing small enough to say. After that, Mr. Niles brought a locked cabinet and set it in the front room. He said the county needed somewhere to keep copies of disputed deeds until the courthouse could be trusted again. Pruitt brought glass for one window. Mrs. Adler brought curtains she claimed were too faded for the boarding house. The Circle M men repaired the roof without asking payment. Owen Bell planted cottonwood saplings along the road, saying roots were the only proper answer to stolen water. And Button, who had once limped like a question, grew fat enough to sleep across the doorway and make visitors step over him. Lena stayed, not because she had nowhere else to go, because the place no one wanted had become the first place that had ever kept faith with her. She whitewashed the office walls, but left the cells untouched. The carvings remained, protected under thin oil and candle glass, so anyone who entered could see what a dying man had done with a nail, a code, and a refusal to be erased. People stopped calling it the Old Jail. They called it the Stone Archive. Years later, when travelers asked why a woman lived in a jailhouse at the edge of town, Bitterwash had learned to tell the story properly. They did not say Lena Varrick bought a ruin. They said a woman with $1 purchased the only witness Gideon Cale forgot to silence. Lena would hear that from the garden sometimes, smiling a little as Button's old tail thumped in the dust. But privately, she thought of it differently. A jail is meant to hold bodies. This one held the truth, until somebody brave enough, broken enough, and patient enough came to unlock it. And in the end, the key was never iron. It was listening.